All right, I'd like to call this work session to order. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Bourne, Commissioner Helfrey,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn, Commissioner Clayton,
Here.
Commissioner Depler.
Here.
Ms. Depler's here via Zoom. Commissioner Jackson. Here. Commissioner Rubis.
Here.
Chair Beatty.
Here.
Councilmember Brost. And Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so tonight we have a work session to discuss amending some of the city sign regulations. Mr. Vunich, do you have anything to add?
Mr. Chair, not relative to any introductions, other than thank you so much for being here early. I know, as Mr. Clayton described it, we have a triple header tonight, so your attendance is much appreciated, and we'll try to be expeditious in our presentations and manage the time as best we can. But other than that, the department's ready to begin the discussion regarding the sign regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. So it's here. Looks like we have a consultant here.
Yes, sir.
All right. I guess if you want to get started, go right ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, first of all, I'd like to introduce Mr. Young's partner tonight. I've forgotten her name, so if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Hi.
Welcome back. Glad we didn't scare you off the first time.
And my apologies for not remembering names. It's my age. So, Mr. Chair and members of the commission, as you know, we're here tonight to kind of talk informally and in depth about electronic message boards and then some other sign regulations that have been identified on an ongoing basis by our business community as potentially problematic. And in the primer that was provided at our public hearing, I identified, I think, a grouping of them, about 5, that the department would like to investigate based upon tonight's discussion and potentially have some modifications for the consideration of the commission. So our task is twofold tonight. First, electronic message boards, which is kind of what brought us all together initially. And then again, some minor modifications to the sign regulations. I do want to introduce our consultant tonight. The department promised to have an expert, and for the most part, the department immediately thought of Randy Burkett. Mr. Burkett owns a consulting firm called Burkett Lighting Design. Mr. Burkett actually developed our existing outdoor lighting requirements that are part of the zoning ordinance. And at that time, there was only a handful of communities across the country that had taken that initial step to kind of memorialize how lighting should be done in an overall community. One that comes to mind is San Diego, California. Mr. Burkett developed those regulations, worked through them with the Planning and Zoning Commission, which had a favorable recommendation, and ultimately the City Council adopted. Later this year, Mr. Burkett will be back in front of you all talking about updates to those outdoor lighting requirements, because it has been a very, very long time since they've been investigated and discussed at depth. Also, Mr. Burkett will be asked to help us with an ongoing issue that's more at City Council right now, and that's the aesthetic lighting. As you know, last year, the department, along with the Planning and Zoning Commission, considered potential changes to what we call aesthetic lighting, or for lack of better terms, landscape lighting. It's proliferated in this city. Almost anybody that has an outdoor deck or patio has some type of lighting in association with it, strung on poles. And collectively, or individually, it may not be an issue, but collectively, it obviously adds to the lighting environment. And we just, as a city, as the commission had recommended, we need to just investigate it and make sure it's done the best way possible. We ran into a little bit of an issue because we were doing it around the Christmas holiday. And somewhere, somehow it came out, we were trying to ban holiday lights, which is as far from the truth as possible. But it slowed our progress down. And now with Mr. Burkett, I think we can finally get over the hump. And that hump might be, it's too tall and we have to just kind of live with what we've got. Or there may be some solutions that would be reasonable to ask our residents to meet. But more importantly tonight, electronic message boards. I think the key element that we've continued to hear from not only you as individual commission members and collectively the Planning and Zoning Commission, but others on our city council, including the mayor, is just how that might impact our night sky, our dark environment, and just the lighting component associated with it. So twofold. The commission asked that our city attorney provide research about how other communities manage electronic message boards, their regulations, and Mr. Burkett kind of talk about his experience when he's been asked to either investigate the installation of electronic message boards or if they're problematic, how best to treat them. And so with that, I've kind of set the stage for the commission's discussion tonight. I will note there are two components to the packet of information you received for tonight's meeting. The first is kind of a reworking of our primer that was provided to you for the public hearing. And Mr. Newberry, Ms. Ripito, and I thought it'd be appropriate to give you all of our sign regulations so you can see them in a single package. So that's what you have tonight. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd like to turn the podium over to Mr. Burkett to kind of get his input. Have his input, any questions or comments or thoughts you might want to direct toward him. And then I was going to turn it over to the city attorney and let him kind of explain his research. It may not be fully complete, but again, I think your questions to the city attorney about other communities may lead us to a little bit more information, a little more research, hopefully better answers to all of your questions. So thank you. And again, with the chair's permission, Mr. Burkett.
All right. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Bunich. Mr. Burkett, welcome.
Thank you all for being here. Thanks for the invitation. As Joe said, we
I apologize for interrupting. Commissioner Depler has her hand up. I just want to see.
So I'm not sure if it's just me, but I can't hear anything that the speaker is saying online.
Yeah, I was just making that observation as well. The volume seems to be really low.
Thank you.
okay.
Oh, that's much better.
Thank you.
do a vaudeville act now. It's great. Okay, sorry about that. I'm glad you brought that picture. So I thought, since this is a fairly narrow subject, I just wanted to give it some context. 15, 20 years ago, about 10 to 15% of our work was out of doors or exterior lighting, about 10 to 15%. Today it's 50%. And we're designers. Most of our work is done on new projects or renovation of old projects. But there's a real desire of people wanting to be outside in public space, community space, and lighting in the outdoor environment has become stronger and more demand and much more in demand than it has been a couple of decades below or before. And the use of the news technology is one of the big reasons. The miniaturization of light sources, that we all know what an LED is, I guess, in generally speaking, and they're about the size of a pinhead. And some are larger, but that's the typical one that you see in the environments. So in quickly narrowing to the specifics that I'd like to discuss, and that is the use of LEDs in electronic media, electronic signs, and in other ways of displaying lighting and messages through light. Let me give you a bit of a context. I mentioned I drive to Columbia for meetings occasionally. We've been doing a project down in the university. And if you drive at night, and I'm sure most of you have driven that route and maybe even further toward Kansas City, if it's nighttime and you may drive 6 or 8 miles in fairly dark environments, and then as you crest the hill, you see this large billboard. It doesn't matter whether it's electronic or whether it's front lighted. And one of the first thing your eyes do is they start to close down a bit. Your eyes, in order to see in dark environments, your eyes open, bright, the pupil gets much larger, and it gathers more light in order to discern what is in front of you. But as you approach something on a dark highway, you almost have to squint. If you think about it, oh man, that's bright. And the same goes for one of my favorites, and it used to be a lot worse than it is now. There are gas stations where if you happen to be outstate and you, again, crest a hill, or you approach a outdoor petroleum station, the light fixture is often quite bright, far more than is needed to execute putting gas in your car and so forth. But you're driving along in a very dark, adapted way. So you squint, you say, whoa, I guess I have to get off here, that kind of thing. I'm telling you these kinds of things because the LED is the most efficient light source on Earth. It far now has per watt, I'll put it that way, and through its size. It's much better or much more powerful than metal halide, even high pressure sodium, which had been the most powerful and the highest output source for many, many years. The LED now is certainly the most powerful light source we have of normal use, not maybe xenon, some of the unusual things you might hear of, lasers and so forth. In this case, the LED is so bright that you can't really look at them. And it depends on the context. And frankly, when we've been dealing with sign brightness, the first thing we ask is, well, where are these signs going to go? And having one in, let's say, if you've been into central cities, such as New York City is a good example. If you're in Broadway or in New York and you walk into the space, you can take measurements, maybe it's 20, 30 foot candles on the sidewalk, and huge boards and display boards and lots of vertical light. And once your eyes are adapted, well, hey, this is pretty cool, really interesting. Well, you can imagine what would happen if we took one of those screens and put it, let's say, in a sensitive area of Wildwood. You would see it from miles and miles. And it's important to understand that context is what really helps you understand and create understand the brightness ratios between inherent in billboards, in the case of whether it's self-generated light or wash light. Excuse me. The other issue, and it's really sensitive, I believe, in Wildwood, many of the places I've been here, is what's called adaptation or ambient adaptation. If you're in a very, I touched on it a moment ago, driving outstate, but in a lot of your communities, there's very little light, and your eyes are much broader and opening. And so you collect more information after dark. When you have brightness come into your field of view, let us say perhaps an electronic board, instantly your eye is seeing glare. And because of that, yeah, you can squint, you make your way past, but with electronic signage, that's what they want you to do, is look at their sign. And this isn't, I'm not attacking the signage community. They want to deliver a message, in that case of a billboard, or perhaps it's an informational, a much smaller one that's informational for a high school or church or some kind of, some other sort of building or activity. The luminance that your eye perceives within a darkened area is jolted quickly when they round the corners. Oh, my goodness. What does that do? It diminishes your ability to see foreground elements. So if somebody, I've seen this all the time in my own life, people might cross in a street or a road or cut across and not go to the intersection. And they may be difficult to see, not because they didn't have sunlight, because your headlamps may reveal them, but it's the brightness. Your eyes have opened up, and then if there's a large glaring element in the field of view, it's much more difficult to see the foreground. And that's where many accidents occur and injuries, especially in urban areas. But we find that there's more and more of this in areas like Wildwood, where it's inherently dark. And when you you invite glare into that context, you have to be able to understand what impact that's going to make on the user, whether it's someone walking, whether it's someone driving the car. It can be debilitating for the pedestrian or the driver. Excuse me. Another thing that we talk about, which I'll try to make this simple, not that you wouldn't understand it in any way I'd put it, but it's something we call transient adaptation. If I'm driving along a fairly dark area and I pass one of these electronic boards, they want me to look at that, and your brain looks over to see, well, what's going on Tuesday night social. If it's too bright, your eyes quickly have to close down to help mitigate the glare. And we do that. We don't do that because we want to. It's because our brain tells us to do that. And so if it's a very bright source, it closes further and further to avoid the glare scatter in the eye. All right. Now you change your gaze back to the street. The time it takes for you to accommodate a bright area in your field of view is only a few seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. You can pretty much make out what's going on. It can take up to a minute to come back to what I'll call is status of the eye. It takes much greater time to readapt to a dark environment once you've seen something too bright. I've seen this in Wildwood. I'll drive through some of the areas, and if it's late at night, here comes a car, and those headlights just seem really bright. I haven't seen headlights that bright in a long time. Well, chances are they're the same headlights you've seen before, but your eyes have opened up. So that transient adaptation, you close down, and once that car passes, it's going to take you upwards of, for full adaptation, could be as much as a minute to reach maximum acuity. So these are things that you really have to wrestle with in communities like this, which include darkened environments. And there are ways to tackle these. And if we get specifically to the brightness of the signs, the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America, IES, has developed guidelines for these signs. And the signs are based on what are called lighting environmental zones. And Joe, I know you and I have talked about those, but they're ranked anywhere from LZ0, which I'll call that the baseline, to LZ4. LZ0 really is only ever used rarely used anywhere else but national parks, inherently dark environments where the moon would be the biggest source and the biggest contribution of light in the area. We've done some work in Yellowstone and a couple of other major national parks, and the light levels are 1/10 of a foot candle, maybe a little more than that at stairs and things. So that one, you can sort of move off the list. But in your type of community, most of your areas I would normally classify as LZ1, which are dim, but not completely dark, which you would see in the park setting. And so then it goes LZ1, LZ2, 3, and 4. LZ4 is the equivalent of, as I mentioned earlier, Broadway or downtown New York City or Chicago, any of the major cities which have a lot of highway lighting, facade lighting, stores, and other ambient contributions. And your adaptation becomes much different as a baseline. The darker you get, your adaptation opens the eye. So in each of those areas, the IES has developed guidelines for how bright an electronic sign should be. And you can imagine if you picked a sign, oh, here's a really bright sign, it's going to overwhelm the area of bright if you are coming in an inherently bright or an inherently dark area. The IES says, I'm just going to read this so you can, LZ2, which is I think a little higher than most of the Wildwood areas. LZ2 is defined areas of human activity where the vision of human residents and users is adapted to moderate light level. Lighting may typically be used for safety, security, and or convenience, but is not necessarily uniform or continuous. After curfew, lighting may be extinguished or reduced as activity levels decline. So this would not be downtown St. Louis. Downtown St. Louis is mostly LZ3 with some LZ4 areas. In this case, I think most of the Wildwood, non-commercial Wildwood areas, I'll call them the communities that have homes and developments for homes and housing, would be LZ1, LZ2, just depending on how much the brightness is. Now, to understand that as sort of a scale, an understanding of how much light is involved in one of these zones, what can one do with an electronic sign that would not overwhelm that community? Most signs now have full range dimming. The thing about LED sources now, they can be dimmed down to 1 or 2% of output. In fact, I was reading earlier this week to prepare that many of the cities in Arizona who have, as most of you know, have a fair amount of stargazing and astronomy clubs, and they're very rich. I've been to Scottsdale and Tucson and several others before. And in their cases, there's also excuse me, there's also a time they select that becomes their curfew. So perhaps after midnight, everything like this must be turned off or dimmed to 25% in this particular case. So not only do the light levels, are the light levels inherently dimmer and better controlled glare from the source, not only that, but there are opportunities to get to even a better, if you're a stargazer, you don't want any light because it might reflect off the grass or off a white cement pool deck, or all of those redirected light circumstances can wash out the sky. But in the case of the luminance of a display, if we come back to that, we have the ability now electronically to have a sign that can be dimmed to almost nothing. I say nothing, of course, that wouldn't do much good, would it? But you can balance it with the ambient lighting conditions. We have been doing some work in communities where every sign manufacturer must supply an integral dimmer that will dim the source down to at least 5%. Now, just think about that. So if you had a background, let's say something, a simple 8x10 display board, you would have every one of those individual pixels are addressable because they're doing signage and they're presenting the background and such. And they can be dimmed, they can be changed, they can be chased. This is a separate thing we'll talk about. But the most important aspect is to have a maximum output of the display. Once you've developed a maximum field of view or a field of luminance, which is reflected light as opposed to incident light. You hear foot candles. You can measure how much light I have on my paper, but the light that reflects back, we call luminance. And so some of it's absorbed by other things and it scatters and so forth. Sorry, getting into nerdy stuff here. But to have that kind of control, it's a matter of balancing it with the surrounding areas. And you might say, well, of course, right? But we've gone for 50 to 60 years and people just don't do it. Or the sign folks haven't done it. But now the IS has set standards that can be adopted by local communities that will help in that case. What we like to see is you go, once it's installed in a particular area, and if you might find the background is inherently dark, you might want to go further than just the fact that, oh, that's an LZ2 or LZ1 area, but it's not, you're still too bright. You can continue to adjust that. And as long as you don't want to end up with a sign that doesn't do anybody any good, because oftentimes it's a church or Boy Scout event and you actually want that information, but you want to do it in a way that doesn't potentially harm someone if it's too glary, plus the light trespass from one point to another. And frankly, the curfews. Hopefully, does somebody really have to see it in 3 a.m. in the morning that there's a Boy Scout meeting 2 weeks from today? Probably not. So there also can be curfews on individual signage as a routine. The billboard issue, and I've just talked to Joe before we started. He said there's 3 sort of old world billboards down in southwest. Okay, sorry. And you're still using older technologies. And I'm not sure if you'll ever do billboards again, but they're under the same focus now from the Illuminating Engineering Society as well as the small ones are. So there are ways to manage this, understand brightness. Also the way sometimes these are inside acrylic enclosures, which can scatter them at angles that aren't wanted. That too can be, well, it's just a matter of making sure you have the right, the proper, I should say, transparent materials. Often one of the ones that you see that's in the old style that has unfortunately been brought into the LED world are white backlit materials. You have no control off the scatter of those. So the light comes through a white surface, even if it's dim, it's going to have what we call a Lambertian curve. So it goes out sort of like this. No matter how tight the beams are or how whatever LEDs are used, it still gets scattered. One of the things that is possible that we've done in a couple of communities, there are at least 1 or 2 sign people now. I'm talking about not local signs, but national folks who are also including, for lack of a better term, an eyelid for each of the LED clusters, so that there's little to none trespass light into the sky. And that's more expensive. It takes some more time to build those, but they do. If you were up in the sky above it, looking down, you would get far less light into the sky from LEDs. Otherwise, LEDs are, no matter how you control that light, you're going to have light trespass into the sky. And the more sources you have, yes, maybe there's one here and we're 2 blocks away and that's somewhere else. Collectively, the dark sky will continue to erode from things like that. So we always like to see using good occlusion of light from the most rigid angles that we get from LEDs, which unfortunately there's no way to capture that light without doing something to block it. Optically, we've been using polarizing films in recent years. Those are still not quite to the point where we would use them. If you've seen some traffic signals, you might be sitting at a traffic light and look obliquely to one side, another set of traffic lights, they look like they're dark. That's typically using a polarizing film with LED sources. You're going to see more of that in the coming years. One last thing about brightness, excuse me. The thing that I've seen, there's far more traffic accidents in this kind of condition, is when the sources are too bright. And even though you can look at them and squint, and, okay, it's going back to what I started with in my discussion, is the inability of the eye to recover fast enough to perhaps see somebody crossing or darting across the street, or maybe it's just something lying in the path on the street itself. Your eyes just can't readjust fast enough. So we really need to hold down those brightness elements close to highways, making sure you could take a single sign and put it here and then put it 150 feet further back. The brightness back there is obviously is going to erode as the distance is squared. But there are good guidelines for those now. They're not codified in too many communities, but it can be done. And if it's put into your documents that a dimmer must be required and final fine tuning and a simple measurement, which takes 5 minutes, can make certain that it meets the requirement for that particular area of the community. Well, I think
Mr.
I'm going to
Burkett?
stop.
Could I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure.
So if you're following along, as I hope I am, summarizing, I think what we've just described is if a electronic message board is to be considered as a possible addition to the city sign regulations, they need to be inclusive of dimmers, curfews, and location needs to be seriously considered relative to transportation corridors. Have I summarized what I think the major 3 points so far?
Yep, that's good. Yep.
So I see Commissioner Elfrey's hand up, but I have a question first. You're referencing these transportation corridors, and this is, I don't know that this is something we can control, but since we have a police officer in the room, it's one thing that personally bugs me about LED lights. And since he's here, maybe he can help us answer. The new LED light bars that a lot of police cars have, can those be dimmed at all? Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. Exactly. Because I can't tell you how many. Mhm. Good. Yeah, because and come to think of it, some of these that I see now aren't as bad as that I remember them being. Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Typically, it's a photo cell that it's low ambient. It goes down to the Illuminating Engineering Society is doing a practice standard for that, and they're going to suggest high, medium, and low settings that can be used depending on the time.
Yeah, because I can't tell you how many times I'll come up on
Ah,
like accident or construction zone at night, and I'm afraid I'm going to hit someone because all I can see is that blinding
Yep.
light.
yeah, construction sites are horrific. They're still working on those. That's a good observation.
All right, Commissioner Helfrey.
First of all, thank you for coming.
Commission.
And this is actually, you said you were kind of nerding out while I was kind of liking it, and I have a lot of notes. So I guess I was nerding out right along with you. Mr. Vunich, kind of this goes with both of you. You had stated at the beginning of your kind of summary that this was for electronic signs. So when you say electronic signs, are you talking about the kind of electronic signs that Marquette has? Or are you talking about all electronic signs, including the signs that St. Alban has or Babbler Elementary has?
For the purposes of tonight's discussion, it's really about signage like Marquette High School, Eureka High School, which are what I consider the typical electronic message boards.
Okay, the reason I ask is because I though like the Crestview has one up on Clayton Road, and it's very, very distracting. It's flashing, it's going, you drive by, and there's all kinds of activity on that sign sometimes. And I know that when we had Babbler put in, when we let them update their sign, we limited the lumens, right? Correct? So, and then Mr. Burkett, you stated that signs with white backgrounds were, they had more scatter and were harder to control, like the letter signs from St. Alban Row. So my question to you then is there a certain amount of lumens that you would recommend for any kind of a sign? And would you say that because, let's say the sign at St. Alban Row was the white background where they replace the letters, that you would say that that is not a good sign, or it is a good sign and it has to have it?
What was that last comment? Last
they-
step, what?
They
Oh,
have a sign that is the one where you have to go out and replace the little letters in it, right? And it's
Yeah.
the white background. Lafayette has the same kind.
Yes, yes.
So do you think that those particular signs are probably not the best type to have?
They really aren't. However, with a white background, a luminous background, and if you have assuming you wouldn't put well, you only need a certain amount of contrast for them to be seen. More often than not, they're so bright, sometimes you can't even read it because the bright background is too bright. So there is what's called a luminance ratio. Just give you an example. Typically, the source of the light is the difference between the two surfaces can be 10 to 1. We've measured them over 1,000 to 1. In other words, the light that's in this field of view is 1,000 times greater than what it's silhouetting. Doesn't need to be that way. So those can be controlled as well. I'm not a big fan of the white ones because you even off axis, they're bothersome.
So is there an industry standard that you would say that you would regulate those such so that you could say, well, if you're going to have this kind of sign, then your ratio has to be this? Is there an
Yeah.
industry standard? So maybe we could find that out. And then with as far as the lumens go, I know that we restricted babblers. And so would there be a uniform lumens restriction on any and all signs?
I mean, there could be by sign type. Again, it's an ambient condition too, in perhaps in the downtown area of
Mhm.
Wildwood.
Yeah,
Like
what's acceptable in one area is probably not necessarily acceptable in another.
Well, I understand
area.
That's correct. It's all about ambient
Right.
levels. You could take three identical signage elements, put them in 3 different places of Wildwood, and you'd show what's representative. Oh, that's too bright. As a matter of fact, I was just looking here with the different lighting zones. They have a recommended nighttime maximum luminance. So if let's say you're in a darkened area, LZ1, not quite the national park, that's the lowest level rating. The luminance is 20. I'll tell you what that is in a moment. And as you go up, it's 40, 60, 80, 100, 200 in an LZ4 zone. A lot of these signs now, they can also be seen during the day. Have you seen those? You'll be driving by and and they're not real distracting then because you're outside with already 1,000 or more foot candles in field of view or greater. But as you go into the evening, that same sign can be disciplined to have much less of an impact
Right.
than it will many times if you don't have controls.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Commissioner Jackson? Or
So I just want to compliment you on your expertise in technology.
Oh.
Be careful because here I come. So you went through the technology and you said, hey, these lights can be turned down to next to nothing. And Commissioner Helfrey asked, is there a standard that you could provide us that would give? Oh, absolutely, because the technology. So I guess, is there any reason not to have lighting? Because the technology is so good, it's minimal. Because that was what I was getting from you. I didn't hear one reason why not to have a sign. Is there a reason not to?
Well, if you think about it academically, as in,
am.
okay, you want it, if you have sign that carries a message that you want to, that needs to be conveyed. For example, a stop sign, it's only as good, it's not any good until you approach it and has retro definition, you can see those signage elements. But if there's I'm just going to use a community center or something off to one side who wants to advertise the pancake fry or pancake
Pancake
so-
dinner.
yeah, fry pancakes. Pancake dinner next week. If it's unlighted completely, then you don't get that message. So the question is, what's the best way? If you want that message to be conveyed, how do you discipline the lighting to let that happen without overpowering the condition?
Totally got it. So we're going through a master plan review. Many in this room are a part of it. And one of the big things is light pollution was brought up in the very first meeting. That was very big when Wildwood started as a community. So back to the technology, is there still light pollution per se that's significant enough in this master plan that we got to take in consideration? Because you can turn it down to 1 or whatever, I guess the notch can go up to 11 if you know the movie, but 1, we'll go down to 1 here. Go ahead, Joe.
Mr. Chair, with your permission.
Go ahead.
So Ms. Ripitor, Assistant Director, and I have had a conversation over the course of a number of months as we've talked about ambient lighting and now electronic message boards. And she has firsthand experience. She was the code enforcement officer in Maryland Heights and the director of planning in Town and Country in Manchester. And her experience is the same I think I've had in Wildwood. We're great at the initial installation and making sure that all of the components comply with the requirements of our outdoor lighting requirements, or in the case of Ms. Ripito, the different communities. It's once it's installed, then a light goes out, or someone drives by and said, boy, I can barely see that. We spent all that money and I can't see the sign. Then people go out and start adjusting, and we don't know that. And for the most part, it becomes just an enforcement nightmare. And that's the concern the department has. If we dimmers and brightness levels were great at the start. It's what comes after that challenges most enforcement entities. And the only thing out of the first 3 things I've summarized is location. Once we have it set in stone or concrete, if we have a general idea, it's not going to move on us. Doesn't mean, though, that's not going to change. And so that's the concern, is we can do it all right, have the best regulations, but a building supervisor can go out and just throw it all in the wind.
Thank you so much. My last one isn't a question, it's more of a statement. So again, the master plan, the light pollution, the commercialization, signs like this look commercial, and we are Wildwood. It's in our charter right now. So I'll come back and be straight up to the attorney. There's exceptions to law enforcement, the fire, to possibly a school. I think that's stretching, and that's what started this whole thing. And I have to go out there in the dead of winter when it's cold, trying to put the homecoming for football or whatever it might be. Right. So I totally got it. But some exceptions, if that's allowed under the law, I might be willing to go along. Of course, I may lose the vote altogether, but I'm against the commercialization of Wildwood, which a neon sign or a digital sign gives me that perception, especially going through the master plan. My 2 cents, you are an expert. Unbelievable. And by the way, my company probably sells well over $1 billion of lamps and fixtures. So a year, Gray Bar,
Oh,
yeah.
Commissioner Rubis.
Good question. I guess I should have given that groundwork early on. The measurement for surface brightness is done in what's called a nit. I haven't heard that term. We use it in sort of nerd land, I guess. A nit is the amount of lumens per square meter. But you'll hear the term luminance, which is the amount of reflected light. And that depends on the absorption of the material whether it's coming through it or reflected. So it's luminance, I think you could use that. Illuminance is light striking a surface, luminance is either the emitted or reflected light from that surface.
If you're check. That's.
Mhm.
And you're gonna get a,
Yes, sir.
this is very good.
Is your mic, turn your mic up. Thank you.
If you're gonna get a reading off of it, and is it gonna measure lumens? Or is it gonna measure foot candles with this
Yeah.
device?
We want brightness, as you said earlier. So you would, frankly, you'd take a light meter, which is, we call it a spot meter, and you could determine how bright that surface is. It's a 1 degree spot meter, and it can find out what that reflected light or whether it's produced light luminance is. Yeah, it's like a 5-second thing.
Okay, so if the ordinance says that after sundown, the sign cannot emit a luminous over a certain point, that is something that we can definitely check and.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
there is some sort of, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly don't want to be running around your communities doing that.
No,
Oh,
but
it looks a little, pointing a luminance meter at it, but that is the way to, yeah, it's very quick. Not like you have to
Yeah.
bring in gear and do things that are difficult. It's just the brightest point on the material or on the surface.
So if we were discussing before, there's a reason that the sign needs to be brighter during the daytime. Yes. And then reduced in the nighttime for those specific reasons, safety, aesthetics and things.
Especially the electronic signs, because they create the content through their brightness of individual LEDs. Whereas a normal sign, let's say that's washed with light, it has one message. If it's sunlight, you read it. If you have a little light on it at night, you can read it. So it's very different.
I suspected, and I'm assuming that people that are wanting these signs, this new technology, they're just not wanting it to put pancake supper today, 10 o'clock. The signs have become very complex, very pixelated. And so the people would probably want like pictures and things. Sometimes the pictures are animated, which causes more distraction than if it was just like a billboard, old time billboard that you used to put up at the Pace Center. You look at it, you see it, and it's done. So I guess that's another consideration.
Yes.
Is the sign just static or is it moving?
Yes, there are the standards have been developed also by the Illuminating Engineering Society that talk about rate of change. Also flicker can be an issue.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody here knows they're sensitive to flicker. I have someone in my office who can walk into a space and they're just, oh, I can't stand it here. And we're all
We have
looking.
it here. Joe just tried to
Okay.
fix it.
So the way in order to suppress that, especially the movement, because they find if things are happening sort of pyrotechnics on your sign, that's just not only distracting, it can draw attention away from something that you're seeing perhaps in the front of your car. Or, yeah. There are some standards though that our signage folks are getting better and better at it.
Is there such thing, and this is my last question, as a temporary sign? Where if a person is contemplating putting up a sign that he can get from the supplier, a sign that could be used on a temporary basis to see if unintended consequences.
I suppose that could happen, yeah. So sort of a trial and
Yeah,
error.
before the investment and the installation.
If they could convince the signage people to say they have, oh yeah, we've got one in the garage here. You can take over and take a look at it.
Yeah, I didn't know
Mock-ups
if that was kind of a marketing thing or not.
Yeah.
Hey, we, give you a trial.
Those are good questions. Thank you.
Okay, that's all right.
Commissioner Huff, I see it, Mayor.
So my question is to Mr. Young. What kinds of laws or regulations are we seeing in other communities? And I would say like Wildwood, but we are so unique that as close as you could get to us.
Happy to provide that, and I'm prepared to do so. I want to make sure this gentleman is done because I've got a whole presentation and discussion to give you on that subject.
Okay, I didn't mean to go out of order. Sorry.
All right, Mayor Garitano.
Thank you so much for providing us with this good information here. I'm going to piggyback a little bit off what Commissioner Jackson and Rubus said in that I think that probably the big question, and I believe it's been asked by you, Commissioner Humphrey, too, about, locations. So what would be permissible, what would be allowed if we were to even consider a very restrictive use to maybe an institutional type, current use that there is there. So if it is a fire, potentially fire school or something like that. I think we want to consider that. What Commissioner Rubus was saying to me, and I believe the department put together several examples that are in the packet, but yeah, I worry very much about some of it's the newer technology, the animated graphics. Sometimes you see a flag waving in some of these signs. It becomes more of a video monitor, but it just really opens up the door to just so much distraction. Whereas in the packet, maybe the best or the example that might even deserve some consideration would be something like a static, which is the church sign there, just text that pretty much replicates in an electronic way what they already have today, right? It's just a board with the letters, but here it's an electronic. But I think there would have to be some real good controls in place, such as the flickering, how frequent it can change, so as to make sure it's very subtle and blends into the environment without being so overly bright, without having a high frequency of change. And again, this is all just thoughts and consideration. I do believe that we have managed fine up to now, but I also do acknowledge that there is an interest by several that they would like to consider us to consider it. So that's what I would suggest that maybe we look at there, if anything, just what kind of controls could be put into place.
Just one remark about the animation that comes with some of these signs. The middle ground to completely static and pyrotechnically active, the billboard folks are doing some of these. They are able to do 2 or 3 different presentations of material on a screen, on a sign that can be, you may drive by it and on your way by, as long as it's done a particular rate, so it doesn't, you may go around the corner, come back, and it has a different sign on it, but slow crossfade, so it doesn't distract drivers. So that's been more successful for the electronic folks in the normal world out here. As of now, in Las Vegas, they don't care. In a lot of places, they won't care. But places where you don't want to distract drivers or change the lighting conditions, because you could have something change and all of a sudden that tree is bright and now it's dark again, and now it's blue because they put a blue ocean on their sign. So there's that's sort of the middle ground where is also testing communities, because of that's why having uplight spill shielded to the degree possible as well. You don't get it into the trees and into the sky.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I think that's a good point. But I think too, we have to stay true to the spirit of our current sign ordinances. When I think of sign ordinances, just the signs that businesses put up above their storefront, we have a certain style, certain lighting style, So there is a consistency, and I think that's what makes Wildwood a unique place, because I've seen other cities that likely don't have those controls, and then all of a sudden, every storefront has a different type of look and feel, and so again, kind of becomes like, I guess I've never been there to like Las Vegas, driving down the strip, I guess, but I think that's what makes us special in a way. So one of the things too I'm worried about is the technology, right? If this is like a car, picture a car can go, fast. It can go 90 miles an hour, but we have speed limits in place, but not everyone will follow them. People speed. So the same concern I have is with the technology. Even though we may have rules in place, if they can go in there and start doing stuff, then we have to enforce that and constantly be watching. And the minute maybe someone who's not aware of our rules gets on that computer or device and starts manipulating, and then all of a sudden we have this animatronics and all this fancy stuff going on, and we have to respond to it. I have a bit of a concern there. Like, are there controls that come with the technology, or are we just relying on whoever is responsible, that they are aware of the city's rules? And then my concern is when somebody new comes along and doesn't know, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can put a waving flag. Let me do that. And then we're constantly fighting this battle.
Yeah, that's a problem. I mean, and there are more and more ways to get it. We've used current limiting devices. There are ways you can work with signage folks and display folks to minimize the overlit conditions, but people can beat the system.
Commissioner Lucas.
We do not, but it's certainly an option. It does, as you know, require an extra level of scrutiny, not only by the Planning and Zoning Commission, but City Council.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Just one last question for you, Mr. Vinich. The sign on Babbler Elementary that we allowed them to put in, that's a static sign, correct? That's a static sign. It doesn't.
It's a static sign, yes.
Is it still the kind that they have to put the letters on, or is it programmable?
It is. It's on
Okay.
programmable type.
So we just controlled the backlit of it, and that we gave them a curfew, correct? And we gave them an amount of lumens output.
Yes, we were able to additional restrictions on that side because they needed a variance for the placement. They placed the sign at the same location as the original sign, but the ordinance had changed relative to placement. So we were able to do a lot of those things you described, ensuring that the sign was on when it needed to be, but not necessarily as Mr. Burkett described. Do you need to know what's going on at 3 a.m.?
Right. Perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. Any other? All right. Well, we're running a little short on time, but Mr. Young, I believe, had a presentation as well. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Glad to help.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
it is 6:15. I don't know how long Mr. Young's presentation might be.
You all can just read what's up there. I'm sure.
I assume it'll be fairly short, but we have a choice. We could conclude this work session, schedule another before our May meeting, or we can keep going until we get to the 6:30 timeframe, which we have to stop and start our other meeting. It's your call.
I can give highlights specifically with answering some of the questions that were asked as related to regulations that we've found in other cities. If that's okay.
Yes, sounds
Okay.
good.
So just first to address Commissioner Helfrich's question. First of all, and I say this in the most complimentary way possible, there are no other cities like Wildwood. So when we looked at other cities, and what we were looking for was similarities, and then how different things that we saw that were unique and different that we thought we could incorporate or advise you of. So a couple of things answering the questions that were asked. Number one is, am I comfortable using, saying that these can be permitted for, I'm going to call it civic uses. So that's schools, fire districts, maybe libraries, community colleges, things of that. Yes, I am fine saying that this is for civic use only. So that's number one. Number two, someone asked, I think it was Commissioner Rubis asked, can they be done as a conditional use permit? We found a city that did do changeable electronic signs. And I'm going to use that term because really it's about having a sign that can change its image, even if it has animation. Yes, I have seen those as conditional use permits. Now, I've even seen them as conditional use permits in one type of zoning use, so non-commercial, whereas in commercial, they were more allowed, but with regulation. Okay. And then somebody asked, and I think it was again you, Mr. Rubis, about distinctions from ambient light and measurements. And there was a city that we found that said all of those types of signs could not exceed 0.3 foot candles from ambient light based on a measurement from a foot candle reader. Now, that may not be the best measurement category to use, but I think it's an example of how that can be done is measurements based upon comparison to the light source to ambient light and saying it cannot exceed a certain amount. So that is certainly something done. And then in terms of other standards that we saw that were fairly consistent, with one exception, and I will tell you the cities we looked at, Kirkwood, Springfield, St. Charles, and St. Peter's. And it gives kind of a variety of different types of cities. I mean, Springfield obviously being a much larger city and having a much more commercial, industrial portions of the city than Wildwood does. And they're the one that does use a conditional use permit process for their signage in non-business districts or non-business areas. They also had limitations on the location of signs in proximity to a non-business area. So couldn't be located within 125 feet, even if it was in a commercial district, couldn't be located with 125 feet of a residential district or area. But a couple of the common themes were no animation, no movement of the sign at all, no flashing, none of that. It had to be static, a static sign. So the image had to be static. The one thing that didn't have to be static in all circumstances was the transition from one static sign to the next. Now, some of them did require it to be a static transition, meaning it goes from one to the next. Others would allow like fades or swipes or something like that. I always think when I think of a swipe, I always think of Star Wars. They always did the swipe transition or the swipe cut. But that type of thing was allowed in one of the 4 cities we looked at. Outside of that, you had to either go to a black screen, then to the next, or just directly to the next. Those were the only 2 options. Others that we identified that were pretty consistent was how long the image had to be present, and it was based upon a minimum. So some of them were 10 seconds, some of them were 8 seconds, but it had to be static for a period of time. And and one of them required a black screen transition of 1 second in between signs. Now, the one distinction there, and again, it was actually in Kirkwood, said that if the sign was within, I think it was 250 feet of an interchange or an intersection, the sign had to be 30 seconds long. The idea being it's long enough to get through so you're not, I guess, looking while it's changing and you're entering an intersection. So it had those type of distinctions in those regulations. A lot of like very specific illumination requirements. I will say, interestingly enough, I didn't see a whole lot of they were mostly based upon ambient lighting, or at least the Kirkwood example. Outside of that, there wasn't a minimum or maximum lumens idea. But I think that would be something, because that's consistent with there's a comment about making sure we're doing something consistent with existing lighting regulations and signage regulations, and I think we would want to do that, certainly. Another thing that I thought was interesting and worth bringing up, first of all, there's always size requirements. There was a minimum font requirement in terms of, 6 inches, I believe, was each letter had to be at least 6 inches. And now some of that was dependent upon proximity to the right of way, but that was the minimum amount. I had one other that I thought was good that I wanted to bring up. I'm trying. Obviously, no flashing, no animation.
Mr. Young,
Yes, sir.
were there any curfews? Meaning
I did not see any curfews, but there were dimming requirements. There were several ordinances that required automatic dimming, and they actually required, in one instance, the sign manufacturer to confirm in writing to the city that those type of components, that type of capability existed in the signage that was being purchased and installed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And those are the highlights, but I'm happy to address any specific other concepts that you would like to see. In terms of the dimming requirement, yes, and I think that also goes to the ambient light comparison requirement that was inherent in the Kirkwood regulation. Again, in that situation, it could only be 0.3 above ambient light, 0.3 foot candles. Yeah, generally speaking, most cities prohibited those except in Springfield where it was allowed in commercial districts. But they were the exception, not the rule.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you for that, Mr. Young. Appreciate it. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, we've kind of given you a lot of information tonight, some very technical, obviously. From the department's perspective, I think it would like to do the following. At the May meeting, give a summary of what you've heard in terms of potential approaches, meaning how to best regulate electronic message boards if we were to move forward. And then also finish the other component of tonight's discussion, the potential changes to certain regulations relative to flat or wall signs and monument signs, and then have a report, the first report in June. If that's an acceptable approach to address this matter, the department would appreciate some direction.
Commissioner Helfrey?
Also on your list of things, letter E said reinforce the processes for the illegal placement of commercial signage in public rights of way. And I would like that to be on the list of things to discuss for sure, because it's gotten out of hand again, to springtime and
Certainly.
they put a sign at every entrance.
It's typically dandelions and bandit signs. They
Mhm.
come about the same time of year.
Right.
Are we allowed to just pull those out and throw them away if we see them?
If they are in the right of way, Mr. Young and the Supreme Court of the United States of America said we can do what we want. And we pull them as fast as we can.
I asked because there were a couple holiday lighting signs in between the sidewalk and the street in my subdivision.
Those can be pulled, and I'll let my code enforcement team know tomorrow that we've got a couple in your subdivision.
Well, one of them I grabbed and threw away.
Okay.
The other one I think has since disappeared.
So. But again, I
He just said
obviously
I could.
there are people waiting to kind of see the disposition of this particular matter, and certainly I don't want to delay it, but I think you've heard a lot of information. And I think Mr. Young's research along with his team at his office. I think we need to kind of summarize all that for you. So as we prepare a recommendation, you have the information that's available in a concise form that you can use.
All right, Commissioner Helfrey.
One last thing, Mr. Burkett mentioned those like almost like eyelids that would make it shield the signs from the night sky. I think you also mentioned that they could be possibly expensive. So that might be interesting to see if they are cost prohibitive for people, because that would kind of be a nice idea. And that's all I have. I'm sorry.
I will ask Mr. Barraqueta with his agreement to maybe investigate that, give us some catalog cut sheets or some examples where that's been applied, and provide an estimate what it adds to a typical sign. Maybe just a shield. Yep. So May will conclude our research and analysis, and then in June, we'll move to a report relative to recommendation. Is that acceptable to all?
Thank you.
We have about 3 minutes if you'd like to stretch your legs and
Yeah, well, I guess your motion to adjourn the meeting real quick. Motion by Commissioner Helfrich, second by Commissioner Rubis. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Hi.
All right, we'll be back in 3 or 4 minutes. one letter of recommendation, one information report, two correspondence items, and one miscellaneous item. Can I get a roll call of commission members, please?
Commissioner Boren,
Here.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Here.
Commissioner Cohn, Commissioner Clayton,
Here.
Commissioner Depler.
Here.
Ms. Depler's here on Zoom. Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Rubis, Chair Beatty,
Here.
Councilmember Brost, and Mayor Garitano.
Here. Thank you. Can I get an approval of the minutes from March 3rd, please? Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Does the Department of Planning have any opening comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just a couple. First of all, thanks again for being here for the work session at 5:15 PM. We do appreciate it. Good conversation about signage. And then also, when we are done with this meeting, remember, we are having a site plan subcommittee meeting thereafter. So if you are able to stay, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And again, we do have a guest with our city attorney. She did her introductions previously, but just want to note it for everyone else that's come in to the building tonight.
Thank you. So at this time, we'll open it up for public comment. If you want to speak on the public hearing, now is not your time. But if you want to speak on any other agenda item, now is your time. And please give a speaker card to Mr. Newberry here with his hand up, and he will call you to the podium. As a reminder, if you're representing yourself, you have 3 minutes. If you're representing a group, you have 5 minutes. Mr. Newberry?
Mr. Chair, the department has not received any speaker cards from those in the room, but we do have a hand up on Zoom.
Okay.
Excuse me, haven't received any speaker cards for the public comment session.
All right. And are you bringing the Zoom? Okay. Looks like Diana, do you have a? Okay. Oh, yeah, for,
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. State your name and address and.
Adam 1365 Nykiel Court, Baldwin, Missouri.
All right, and your comment?
Diana, 1365 Nykiel Court.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. So first off, we'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to be here today. And also thank you. So we're from Lucky Dog Central, which is the new coffee shop located at 16917 Manchester Road. And so we'd like to begin by thanking you guys for allowing us to operate a business in the city of Wildwood, which is, the nicest city in the United States, and we absolutely love. And so later on today, you guys are going to be addressing our signage, which is a T-post sign, which has to be a certain number of feet on offset from the sidewalk, and currently is too close to the sidewalk. So you guys are going to be addressing if we can leave it currently where it is in place. And what we wanted to say was that it would be very appreciated if we could leave it in place, because offsetting it any further, it goes down a hill. It would make it very hard for people to see. It allows people who are driving by to know that we are a coffee shop. And so kind of the impulse, people that are looking, didn't know they were looking for us, it makes it more visible. And then also, we do believe that by allowing us to leave it in place, it will only help us to grow, and we will be an asset to the community as time goes on. We've already invested so much into the building. We actually started this process like 4 years ago, if you guys remember. And so it's been a long course. And so just by having this tiny little advantage for our signage, I think would really it would be a big deal in the long run. And then that's pretty much it. But may I answer any questions?
You're good for now. If we have any questions when your agenda item comes up, we'll bring you in.
Oh, okay, perfect.
All right. Thank you for that.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. All right. If that is it for public comment, we will go into our first public hearing. So, as a reminder, in the city of Wildwood, public hearings are truly intended to accept comments and questions concerning these posted items. Since this request is being presented at a public hearing, no action is planned on this item tonight, and consideration of it is to be taken no earlier than the May 2025 Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This approach ensures that the members of the commission will hear all opinions before taking any action. The city's Department of Planning will address the comments, questions, and concerns that are raised tonight and include them as part of its formal recommendation to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Anyone in attendance at City Hall tonight wanting to speak should fill out a speaker's card and leave it with Mr. Newberry. Those in attendance via the Zoom webinar platform should use the raise hand feature to indicate you wish to speak at this hearing. A team member will add you to the list of speakers, which will then be communicated to me as chair, and I will invite you to speak when it is your turn. The public hearing process is outlined in the public hearings guidelines pamphlet, which can be found on the table at the entry area to the council chambers. These guidelines are also provided on tonight's online meeting agenda. The commission will allow all parties adequate time to present their position. As outlined in the public hearing guidelines pamphlet, speakers who are designated as a group speaker representing more than 5 individuals will be allocated 5 minutes to speak. Those individuals representing themselves will be allocated 3 minutes to speak. In addition, information on these items can be found on the city's website at www.cityofwildwood.com. The commission would like to thank you for your cooperation and participation at tonight's hearing. All right. Mr. Vunich, PZ 4-25.
Thank you, sir. Tonight's public hearing involves PZ 4-25 Broken Rock Studio, 18360 Pinhook Hollow Drive, Wildwood, Missouri 63069, Kara Vince Keady, 7700 Forsyth Boulevard, Clayton, Missouri 63105. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, to be granted upon an approximately 6.5 acre tract of land that is located at the terminus of Pinhook Hollow Drive, private, west of its intersection with Allenton Road, public. Property address 18360 Pinhook Hollow Drive, St. Louis County, locator number 28X520046, NU non-urban resident district. Proposed use: a specialized private school and/or retreat operated by a not-for-profit entity, which would include a multimedia production facility, i.e. music recording studio. This property is located in Ward 6. And Mr. Chair, before Mr. Newberry begins his presentation of some of the slides of the subject site, the department would like to enter into the record the following items: the charter of the City of Wildwood, the master plan of the City of Wildwood, Chapter 415 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, its zoning ordinance, including Chapter 415.500, the conditional use permit procedure, the file that has been developed and maintained by the City of Wildwood relative to this request, and any testimony or exhibits, plans, or other items provided as part of tonight's public hearing. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as is typical for a public hearing, the department has prepared a brief slide presentation with some exhibits regarding the subject site. The property is highlighted on this slide in the blue color. The neighborhood is nestled between the Rockwoods Range and Greensfelder County Park. This is a closer up parcel view. The subject site is highlighted with the blue line here, the end of the cul-de-sac. And next will be a series of photographs, starting with the access to the site. Oh, excuse me, here's an aerial image of the site. And then next to photographs. This is a photograph at Allenton Road entering into the subdivision. This is looking north and to the east. This is at the same location looking towards the south, towards the city of Eureka. This is standing at the intersection with Allenton Road, looking onto Pinhook Hollow Drive, the private street that accesses the site. And this is standing at the drive entrance area, private drive, looking down Pinhook Hollow Drive from the subject property. This is an image provided by the petitioner as part of its submittal, just showing the buildings on the site. The subject of the hearing are the buildings on the right-hand side, that area of the site. And next are just a few closer up photos of those accessory structures. I'll just, okay, this is standing at, so this is standing at the same location, looking up the private drive toward the cul-de-sac area. This is the driveway on the subject site. And then just a couple closer up views. This is on the south side, looking back to the north towards the drive entrance. Similar, just the different corner of this area. And then this is just a plan sheet to have available if needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry.
Mr. Chair, as is custom, the petitioner or petitioner's representative can come forward to the podium and have up to 15 minutes to present their request.
Come on.
Good evening. My name is Vince Cady. I represent the petitioner. I'm the one that filed the petition that's before you this evening. We have with us the three directors from Broken Rocks, Mark McGraw, Mike Zito, and Tony Brognell. All of them are available for questions. The site was engineered, civil engineering was provided by Stock and Associates. We have a representative from Stock and Associates, John Williams, here. If there are any questions, we don't anticipate him making a presentation. And then the architect that designed the improvements is here to walk you through the site plan. So without further ado, I'll get out of the way and I'll let the guys that know what they're talking about. First, Mike Zito come up. He's the executive director for Broken Rocks. Explain what their vision is, explain what Broken Rocks is, and what they see the petition doing, not only just for Wildwood itself, but in the industry. And then after that, like I said, Thad Martin will come up and walk you through the site. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much for letting us come tell you about our dream. My name is Mike Zito. I'm the executive director of Broken Rocks. And I'll just tell you a little bit about myself at first. I'm born and raised in South St. Louis. I lived here for 32 years. My father worked at Anheuser-Busch for 40 years. This is where my family is from, not Wildwood, but South St. Louis. I grew up playing music in St. Louis. I'm a professional musician. And I learned playing in bars and casinos at Soulard and on Laclede's Landing and everywhere you can think of, casinos, anywhere around the area. Did that for many years and eventually got caught up in drugs and alcohol, and I needed to move away. I moved to Southeast Texas, where I got clean and sober. I met a wonderful woman and I started playing music again. And obviously with a healthy mind and healthy people around me, I got some success much sooner, and I became a professional recording artist. And that's what I do to this day. I'm a professional recording artist, about 24 albums out. I produce records, I tour internationally, writing songs and performing. My friend and partner, Mark McGraw, who is a wonderful philanthropist, contacted me a few years ago with the idea of giving back and building a world-class recording facility, somewhere where we could bring young artists in, let them record, teach them the process, and basically make their, dreams come true. As corny as that sounds, that's what we believe. We looked in Texas, Florida, California. Just none of the places quite fit. And in that time, discussing this idea, my wife of 18 years was diagnosed with cancer, and she passed away a short 12 months later. So that was very devastating for my family. And within a few months later, Mark contacted me again and said, we need to do this. You need to get focused. We need to get back at it. This is good for your family. And have you considered moving back to the St. Louis area or Missouri? And that started to make a lot of sense to us because this is where I'm from. My family is still here. I know a lot of musicians. I know a lot of people in the community. And I got very excited about the idea of moving back to Missouri, where I'm from, to give back and to use all these years of expertise. And we found our dream property right here at 18360 Pinhook Hollow in Wildwood, Missouri. The idea that we came up with is this is a respite. This is a place of creativity. It's away from the city, away from bars, a clean and sober environment for young people to come and learn in private, kind of away from all the noise, that they can spend time somewhere in the country that's beautiful and focus on making music, learning the recording process. And that's why we're here tonight. I own a record label called Gulf Coast Records. Our partner, Tony Bronigal, is a world-class producer, drummer. We've brought this idea to a lot of musicians in our industry, and people are responded very well to it. This is needed. The music industry is not what it used to be. It's very difficult. And if we could help young artists maybe take the next step sooner to having success or just learning this creative process, we feel like we're doing something that's very worthwhile. So if you can't tell, I'm very excited about this process to come back to my home state and to the St. Louis area and to help young people and use this all this experience that I've gained to do that right here in Wildwood. It's an amazing idea. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Thad Martin with V3 Studios out of Maplewood. We're the architects on the project. Are we able to pull up the submission by chance to have access to the site plan and floor plan? Please. All right, that plan will do for now. Thank you. So when Broken Rocks came to V3 Studios with this idea for this world-class recording studio on this property here in Wildwood, the original charge was to investigate the existing horse barn structure. So currently there's a single-family residential home accompanied by two detached structures, one of which is a horse barn, the other of which is a detached four-car garage. And so the original approach was, because of the character that's inside the horse barn currently, is could we harness that character and repurpose that building for the purposes of the world-class recording studio that you were just told about, that is the Broken Rocks vision. And upon analysis of that building, we determined that it was absolutely purpose-built only for a horse barn. No additional structural capacity could be added to it in any way, shape, or form. It was totally perfect for what it was made for, but could not be converted into a recording studio in order to satisfy energy code demands or even just structurally to add ceilings or anything in the space. The building itself was not going to tolerate that. However, we, in crafting a proposal that could address the issues that were discussed relative to how are we going to turn this space into a world-class recording studio, is we still want to honor the architecture of what's existing in space here currently, which is the horse barn, and just the fact that it's located in a country that has, or an area that has such a rich history of horse farms in general. I mean, just on the road on your way in, you pass, I believe, 3 other farms. And so we wanted to be sensitive to the existing architecture, the existing buildings that were on the site with our proposal. And so we decided that we were going to propose a new building that looks like the existing building, but on the inside is a fully functional world-class recording studio that's able to satisfy all of the technical demands required of a recording studio and all of the physical requirements of the built environment relative to energy code and envelope. But over the course of, I guess if you can go to the next slide. Yeah, this will work. Actually, keep going to the next. Yeah, you can stop on that one. That one works well. Thank you. So when we were looking at the existing footprint of the existing horse barn, we were trying to match exactly the footprint that was there because we originally were like, we're going to replace the building with exactly the same building. As we worked through the program, we determined that we had to grow the building ever so slightly. So the existing building is about 2,200 square feet. The proposal is for a 3,100 square foot recording studio in its place, sharing the northeast corner of the existing building. So we'll get to some renderings in a second here further in the proposal to kind of show what the existing conditions are and show what the proposed conditions are. But we've grown the site to the south and to the west, so it has increased a little bit in square footage. When we go to the next slide, this just shows the interior configuration. Thank you. This shows the interior configuration, so the floor plan coupled with the exterior elevations, the proposed elevations. And so we can see if you look on the bottom left of this screen, there's the 4 elevations of the building. The top left of those is the, I believe, east elevation. And that is to look exactly like it was today, minus a little exterior horse stall along the left-hand side of that. The biggest deviation is on the east, where we've added a nice large window, which in relation to the floor plan, that is in the live room itself. So that's a view out to the woods to the west. If you can go to the next. Yep, here we go. So yep, just show this one. So top image is the photo that you all saw previously. And then the bottom image is a rendering of the proposal. Like I said, the new building is approximately 1,000 square feet larger than the existing. And also due to required overhead heights inside for structure and HVAC ducting, the building is about 3.5 feet taller, proposed to be about 3.5 feet taller than the existing. So you can kind of see where the gutter line of the proposed addition is slightly higher than the gutter line of the existing. But in general, the ethos is that from the road, the new building is going to emulate the existing buildings that are there currently on the site. Full disclosure, though, over the course of since we submitted this to today, the project has had to grow to include the garage itself. There's drainage issues on the site. So the neighboring properties shed water to the south, and then the driveway, as you saw in the photo earlier, is up an incline from this house, all drains towards the barn and the garage. And so in order to address those grade concerns, we need to raise the grade of the garage and the barn ever so slightly to address that, about 18 inches. But the overall footprint of what we've sent here, what we've proposed here for the barn itself has remained the same and then is encompassing the footprint of the existing garage. However, our ethos still is to replace the existing buildings with new buildings that are as faithful to the existing buildings as absolutely possible, as evidenced by those elevations in the prior slides. And so, ultimately that's kind of the architectural approach, is to just be sensitive to what's existing and how can we then construct something new that honors the ethos of Broken Rocks to incorporate their mission into this beautiful property, but yet not disrupt what is already there today. Ultimately, the goal being someone could drive down the street today or drive down this road in 2 years from now after the building is constructed and not know that anything was different from one iteration to the other because of the similarity, the sensitivity of materials, the sensitivity of the massing, all reflecting what the current conditions are. But of course, the interior would be the new recording studio, not an old horse barn. So that's it on the architectural piece.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, just to advise you, I've been pausing when they switch speakers, but we have about 4 minutes and 20 seconds left.
All right, thank you.
Just to kind of wrap up a little bit, maybe to address some concerns that I've heard many times in front of planning and zoning commissions. A couple things to bear in mind here. Broken Rocks is a not-for-profit organization. This isn't a commercial, adventure that we're going into here. Two, there is a continuing residential component here. The manager of the property and his wife, Matt and Shauna Johnson, live on the property. They're going to continue to live in the house, and it will be continually occupied by residents, so it will always have the residential component to it. The important aspect to remember here is this is an engineered studio, and it's designed for recording, and part of the design is to try to keep keep noise out. And much like when you try to black out light, when you try to block out sound, it will not only block out sound that would interfere with any music that's being recorded, but it'll prevent any music from getting out of the barn or the recording studio. So there's not going to be any type of nuisance aspect with the studio itself. What we're looking at doing is having musicians in for this not-for-profit organization 4 or 5 times a year. This is not going to be a robust group of people that are coming in. We anticipate at most at any one time 10 individuals being on the property beyond the residential component there. And again, that'll be maybe 4 or 5 times a year. We've been in communication with the neighboring property owners, and we've been very open and upfront about what our intentions are and how this is going to work. We've started reaching, at least orally, some agreements about how this will work and have agreed to improve the road as part of this project, if approved. And after construction, we anticipate that there may be some damage to the road. The road is already in a certain state of disrepair, and Mark has very generously agreed to do that, to repair that road, make it better. And so with that, without any further ado, like I said, we're all here for questions or comments after you hear from the public. Thank you.
All right, thank you. On the roads, if you stay up there 1 second, it looked like is it a gravel road right now?
It is.
Would it continue to be gravel and you would just repair the gravel, or?
That's our intention. Yeah.
So you'd fix the gravel that got destroyed, but it would still be gravel.
There's 2 components to that. There's a certain state of disrepair right now that we've agreed to help out and go ahead and fill in some, culverts and whatnot that they're going to need some work. But then after construction's complete, we would do a complete overhaul of the road itself.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. Travis, if you want to go ahead with public comment.
Thank you. First public commenter is Mr. Trost. Mr. Trost has asked that Mr. Meyer go before him.
Welcome.
Here, obviously, everybody cares about the neighborhood, huh? It is a beautiful place. I'm Norm Meyer. Been living out there for 23 years. So
can you state your address for the
18336 Pinhook Hollow.
Thank you.
There are some questions about what we just talked about, the paving of the road after construction and everything. We understand that this road has had the same indentures since 1982, which, as you all know from Wildwood, are not easy to change. So we're stuck with them, which is just wonderful. So I think it's $200 per lot. So we're grossly underfunded. And obviously, even with just 4 or 5 sessions, we don't know, it's groups of people there at the end of the road. So I think we've all come to a pretty good conclusion that seems fair, as long as they're willing to, actually, we have a written agreement and it does say paved on here. So we need to clarify that. And we also need to clarify the cup, which changes to a commercial for that lot. And we do not want that situation to travel with the residency, meaning when Broken Rocks is over, so is the cup. It goes back to residential. Obviously, there's 2 parks around this neighborhood that are absolutely beautiful, and we want to maintain that integrity, which I believe we are in agreement on that as well. So I don't really see anything else. Anything else, Bob? we'll talk about it, but that's our main concern. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Bob Trost. I'm a trustee of the Pinnacle subdivision. Have been so for about 20 years. Excuse me if my voice drops or whatever. I've got Parkinson's, so my voice had a tendency to drop. And so if you don't hear me clearly, please ask to clarify. I think Norm basically hit the two main points that we have, and that is the cup. What happens to that? Now we have saw in the regulations about the cups are unlimited except for certain circumstances. We have submitted a list of questions attached to your package of papers there that we'd like answered. And I told Mark McGraw last week that I'm not in a position to vote on anything right now because we still are going through the understanding process of what's going on here. And so, and Mark was fine with that. He's acceptable at these folks have been very nice to us and so forth. So anyway, the paving is a big important part of what happens to the road after this thing is completed. And there, we're a low budget trusteeship or HOA, so we have limited issues. I'll try to hit those very quickly. The one was the cup. The second is the paving of the road. The third is the submission there. We have several questions we ask of the Travis Newberry with the zoning commission that we want answered. Some of them go to the very heart of, can we outright reject this whole thing? Our indentures say nothing about commercial. They do say plenty about commercial, that it's not required on our part to do. And we view this not-for-profit as a commercial group. So the last question in your handout you will see is that we have that question. Can this group automatically, if we don't want it, tell us it's over? In fact, I'll go so far as to say that I'm not sure because of the nature of our indenture that we even had the ability as trustees to vote again. We haven't had a vote internally. We have 10 lot owners. Two lots are up on a hill somewhere. The guy hadn't paid for 20 years we've been there. We've got that issue going. And is he a member of good standing? I think he is. We haven't booted him out yet. So we have that issue. We have to get all that ironed out. This thought occurred to me later. I don't mean to spring this on the Broken Rocks folks, but as I've gone through, I talked to an attorney over the weekend, and I have that legitimate concern whether we even have the authority as trustees without having a vote to say yes or no. So that's an issue we have, and I think that might pretty well do it for me. I haven't decided yet. I know I sound contrary many times, but for me, it's still a matter of let's understand how big the spread box is. We use that term in the corporate world that I came up from, and let's see how big the spread box gets, or what we can do to skinny it down. And the big thing for our group is going to be the cup. I think that should be our priority. Can that thing go away when we want it to go away? Maybe that's changing the reason for the property being not for profit. Maybe make it not for profit, but pull the idea of a retreat or a resort kind of thing. So anyway, appreciate the time, and we'll leave that for you to think about. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Chair, the next speaker is Catherine Doty.
Good evening. My husband and I are the owners of the adjacent lot at 18348 Penhall Hollow, and we'll be going through the process of building in the next year or two out there. My husband is also one of the trustees, but since the other two have been heard from, I thought I would bring a few comments. Looking at the plans, looking at the accommodations that Broken Rocks has been willing to make in terms of indemnifying the road, indemnifying the neighborhood, since they would be having business purposes at the end of the road. They've been very willing to do that. They've drawn up a document which would essentially, they would provide, insurance to hold harmless the neighborhood if there were a mishap on the private road. They have gone the extra mile to maintain the appearance of the current structures that are present on that property. And as the prospective next door neighbors, we're very happy with that. Mr. McGraw, Mr. Zito, everybody involved in this has been very upfront, very kind, has bent over backwards to try to accommodate the concerns that the members of the neighborhood have. We have had opportunities to talk with them. There's been a lot of email communication and text communication in regard to this matter. I can also say that not the entire neighborhood is in agreement on whether or not the road should be paved or it should remain gravel. So that's something Pinhook is going to have to work out as to what ultimately, the full repair of the road after their construction is going to look like. But the neighborhood is not yet in agreement on that. From the standpoint of the things that they have have indicated that they are willing to do, including in a legal document, at least from our standpoint as the neighbors, we're in support of both of their goals, because I think it's a worthy goal from the standpoint of providing something completely different in the music industry. And that it is from the aspect of the usage, that is a 5-bedroom house, right? There's going to be 2 people essentially living there to help maintain the property. But in a 5-bedroom house, you can have 2 parents and you could have 2 kids per bedroom. So you could have 12 people in that house. And that's what they're talking about as a maximum on that property of 10 people. So I think that is something also to take into consideration from the standpoint of the usage. Our only concerns, which Mr. Trost also brought up, was that not having the CUP to run in perpetuity with the property. Because while we are very supportive of Broken Rocks and their mission, we don't want commercial business at the end of the road as opposed to a non-for-profit organization. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will say for the CUP, those can definitely have sunset clauses in them from my experience on the board. And we can set that and like for a certain amount of time and then renewals after that. Like later on tonight, we've got one for a cell phone tower that we see every year here. All right, Mr. Vunich or Mr. Newberry, do either of you have anything?
No further speaker cards have been received, and I don't see any hands raised on Zoom.
Sure. Yeah.
Just to clarify a couple points. Number one, we did prepare an agreement with the neighboring property owners that outlined specifically what we're agreeing to do and to limit ourselves with. And one of those agreements is to limit it to no more than 10 people on the property, invitees at any particular time. With regards, the agreement says we'll pave the road. As you just heard, they haven't decided if they wanted asphalt or if they want a road. I mean,
and now I understand why you kind of avoided my question earlier.
I didn't mean to sound ambivalent like that, but either way is fine with us. And once that's decided, we don't have any problem specifying that in the agreement that we prepared. With regards to the CUP, acknowledge that the ordinance does allow for sunset provision. From our standpoint, we would prefer that not to be the case, so we didn't have to come back continuously. I'll also acknowledge that the conditional use permit ordinance would allow somebody to come in and complain about it if we're doing something wrong, and then we would be up for review as to whether or not it should be revoked. But most importantly, we're a not-for-profit organization. This is going to be a teaching opportunity. This isn't going to be a commercial endeavor. And we're going to be very limited into what, if you grant this conditional use permit, the CUP will be limited to that specific use. So any concern about a bed for breakfast or anything else coming in there, that's not going to be allowed by the CUP. And we're happy to acknowledge that and have acknowledged that in writing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Jackson.
I'd say it's very refreshing and very smart that you talk to the landowners. We don't see that as often, do we? And it's a big.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yes. I want to make sure I understand. So summarize it outside looking in. Is this kind of like Robert Redford Sundance Ranch which is film, but this is music similar? Okay. And the other thing is, I would say it sounds to me like there's a lot of things everyone's got to do on the back end before Joe even takes this up, as far as whether you're HOA, because I think our attorney, John, isn't the HOAs are very powerful in these matters, aren't they? Or I got that wrong? And we have stuff that comes up here all the time. If the HOA says no, it may be over.
Correct. We have no authority to overrule an HOA's regulations.
Okay. I asked the question. I assume that was the answer, just to make sure everyone heard that. And Joe and Travis are the pros from Dover here to guide you through the process. It sounds like there's things going on, but that's.
I will say,
comment.
Is this a road maintenance HOA or is this a full-fledged HOA? Because there is a difference. It is, okay. Mhm. Okay.
Joe, I'm sorry, Travis, but Joe, I think if they did go to pavement, then then that puts in a city requirement if they go to a paved road, right?
There are certain requirements that we will include if the conditional use permit is favorably reviewed relative to the roadway. But I want to assure the trustees, we did receive your submittal with the questions. I held off responding to them so we could have the public hearing tonight, have all the information available before we responded. But we'll get those out to the trustees of the association before we prepare a recommendation. So they have those in hand when they are discussing the internal matters that they've described tonight. When we send them to the trustees, we'll also send them to the Planning and Zoning Commission members. So you're all seeing the same thing at the same time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Are there any other questions, Commissioner Rubis?
How is this property ownership?
By the Missouri limited liability company called Transient Gradient, and the temperature gradient. Thank you. Temperature Gradient is going to donate the property to Broken Rocks if the CUP is approved. Yes. And the application, the applicant is Broken Rocks. The owner signed off on it. There's a verification from the owner, Temperature Gradient, that's signed with the petition as well.
Oh. On site.
Or your mic? Sorry.
Thank you.
When the property is donated, then Broken Rocks becomes the owner. How will they take care of the house? Are employees of Broken Rock going to live in the house? Who will live in the house? Because if they're only going to use it 4 times a year, how's that all going to work?
So Matt and Shauna, who are here, are living there now. They will continue to live there. Broken Rocks will be donated the entire property, not just the barn and the studio. And they will continue to live there. And if they want to move on, then we'll get somebody else in there. One of the written agreements that we've provided to the neighboring property owners is that there will continually be a resident in the house that will live there throughout the year.
The participants then, the people that you are going to be schooling, will they live in the house while, and for what period of time do you anticipate?
We do not anticipate any of the invitees to come and live at the house. Probably be at the Holiday Inn right down the street. We have a van that we can go pick them up and bring them there. And just from an organizational standpoint and a liability standpoint, that seems to make sense to us to do it that way rather than have everybody there.
Yeah. And then how do you select, how would you go about selecting your participants?
That's something I can't answer, but maybe Mark or Mike.
My name is Mark McGraw. I'm one of the directors.
Okay.
Scottsdale, Arizona. This will be a process of Broken Rocks building a board at a later date upon completion of both the CUP and the construction. The board will decide between, there'll be half musicians and half people in the music industry itself. And when somebody shows the talent and the desire to come do this, then it will be a board vote to bring somebody on board. And then it will be Broken Rocks paying all the expense to bring them here, to put them up at the Holiday Inn, to record in the studio.
Will you be then instructing both musicians and recording technicians, or just musicians?
Musicians, recording technicians. We're gonna work with the local college to possibly intern some studio engineers, things like that. It's got a pretty broad scope of the educational factor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Helfrey?
So not to beat the dead horse, but it's an educational place, so it's not a recording studio. You're not going to be actually making recordings there. It's just strictly education. Is that correct? Absolutely. Come on up, please.
No, it is a recording studio, but the instruction or the learning process would be working with an actual, all the equipment in a professional recording studio, which, they have one at Webster University if you're lucky enough to be a student at Webster University. So we may have students there that would come and intern, but if, like we said, if we have this board and I nominate someone that I say, this is a young woman I've seen that sings and plays piano, and she's very talented, and she can come there and she wants to make this recording, but maybe she wants to also learn the recording process so that she can learn to make her own records as the time goes on. So it'll be a hands-on learning facility that can actually be used to make absolutely professional recordings.
Well, the reason I ask is one of the things I heard a couple of times was I apologize because I wasn't going to ask a lot of questions tonight, but one of the things I heard a couple of times was you were going to limit it to 10 people. And so if you have a band, a lot of bands I listen to have more than 4 or 5 or 6 people in them, and maybe they have the recording studio people in addition to that. And so now that's, you're at 10 plus.
Generally.
And equipment and trucks that bring the equipment in, if somebody has a guitar and they have a bunch of amps or their whole drum kit that they have to bring. And so now you're talking trucks and bodies. And so I'm just curious how you can limit that. So
There won't be any trucks with equipment because all of the drums and all the amps and all the equipment will be at the facility in the studio. Most professional studios have everything already built in. It's called backline. So there'll be a big organ, a grand piano. There'll be several drum sets, many guitar amplifiers, everything there. So there won't be any equipment coming in and out. Now, from my standpoint, I don't play in bands that have 10 people in them because you can't make any money. Usually they're in 4. I'm not being patronizing. There's
Yeah.
like 4 people or so, but we're not really looking necessarily to worry about recording a band as an artist. If I was there producing the record, it would be myself, would be the engineer that's running the board. And then maybe there would be this woman that plays piano and sings. We may bring in for her a professional drummer, professional bass player, someone that knows how to record and do this. It's not necessarily to bring an entire group in, it'd be to help this artist make, she's written songs, we're going to help her record the songs. In the recording process, we don't need all of those people there at the same time to record. What we need is maybe the drummer and the bass player and the piano player, because we're not going to, it's hard to record all of the instruments at the same time. And with the technology today, it's not necessary. So we would maybe record a couple of the main instruments right away and get it recorded. And then we would be, myself and Tony Bronigal, who's a world-class drummer. That's what we would be doing. I would be lending myself to play guitar on some parts as the producer. By the way, this is very common in the music industry.
I'm just getting clarification and getting it on the record. So we're good.
Okay.
You're not on trial. I'm just asking.
No. I'm just happy to let you know. I mean, that's kind of the way the process goes. So we don't ever expect to have 8 people set up all recording at once with other people going on. That's a nightmare in any situation. We want to work with an artist, someone that's writes songs, sings, has learned to play their instrument. And then in the learning process, Tony may have some students from Webster come in, and maybe we have, 4 or 5 younger people in there, and they're just going to learn how a mixing board works. Something like that. Okay, thank you.
So you're focused on singer-songwriters rather than bands more.
Generally, in my world, owning a record label, their bands are far and few between these days. It's really more of an artist, someone that's writing songs, singing songs. Maybe they're playing an instrument. Maybe they're just a singer. So even in my record label producing, it's usually artists, and then we usually provide the band for them.
My music taste is kind of stuck in the 90s and early 2000s, but it seems like most of the more current stuff I see, like you say, is 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, well, the industry is there's not nearly much money to be made in the music industry, and that's the biggest part of this. That's what makes this so special. Is it costs a lot of money it would cost upwards of $40,000 or $50,000 to go to a professional studio like this for 2 weeks and hire big name musicians and a producer, and we're going to alleviate that cost. I mean, that gives them the opportunity to make a professional recording, and then maybe they can go take it out and get it played on the radio, or they could get some kind of a career out of it. That's our hope.
Sounds good.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Just Mr. Chair, Mr. Cohn has his hand raised.
Commissioner Cohn?
Yes, and I hear you describe it as a non-for-profit, but when you cut right through it, really is a commercial enterprise, whether or not you make money. And one of my concerns is, you talk about, bringing a van in with the student, but you also talk about other individuals that come in to assist. What type of traffic should the residents anticipate from your, I hate to say it, your commercial enterprise? Will there be any issue? One more thing, am I correct that there'll be no overnight guests other than the residents in the existing single?
From what we've heard, I believe you are correct. But
That is correct. And we don't anticipate a lot of traffic. We anticipate a van. If people are coming in from out of town, they'll stay at the Holiday Inn, van will be there. It's not like there'll be a lot of traffic.
So if they're local and you have other people coming in, is there adequate parking?
There absolutely is adequate parking on the property. It'd be no different than a residential subdivision and having people over for Thanksgiving dinner. If we limit it to 10 people, there's more than enough parking on the site. And so the traffic wouldn't be anything unusual for that type of road or that type of neighborhood.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, thank you. All right, can we get a motion to close the public hearing if there are no more? Oh. All right, if you're going to keep going, can you come up to?
This is why we're trying to come to agreements on the road so that we can avoid all of these number countings and animals in the middle getting completely covered by dust and things that hopefully if we grant their wishes, then they make it more convenient for us as well. So hopefully we're going to look at all this as improvements. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Motion to close.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstain? All right, public hearing is now closed. Thank you for your time. All right. Next on the agenda, Mr. Newberry, PZ 1-25.
PZ 1-25, Cattails Lodge, care of Jane Budnick, 404 Strecker Road, Wildwood, Missouri 63011. A request for an amendment to the site-specific governing ordinance for an existing commercial center located at the northeast corner of Strecker Road and Clayton Road. Amended C8 Plan Commercial District, street address 16497 Clayton Road, St. Louis County, locator number 21U120327, which seeks a modification to the
Sorry, can you guys exit the room to keep talking, please?
Just let me know when you want me to proceed.
All right, go. I think they've pretty much left.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Which seeks a modification to the permitted uses per the current legislation that are authorized at this location. Proposed use, luxury pet boarding facility, kennel, which will be limited to the keeping of cats, Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vinich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight the draft letter of recommendation relating to the item Mr. Newberry just read into the record. The item relates to adding an additional permitted use to an existing amended C8 Plan Commercial District ordinance that was approved by the city of Wildwood in approximately 1999. The use is a luxury cat boarding facility. As was noted during the presentation of the department's information report, concerns relating to any activity outside the tenant space were addressed by the conditions associated with the recommendation from the department, as well as many others relating just to the care of the cats, as well as the impact on the facility, the center itself. So tonight, the report is in the appropriate form to be forwarded to City Council for its consideration and action. Therefore, a motion and second is necessary, along with a vote to approve the draft recommendation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Commissioner Helfrey?
Mr. Vinich, I read this earlier today, and the only thing I saw was something in reference to the exterior of the building was about the appearance. I know that we talked ad nauseum the last time about how they would not, because it was a kennel, they would not be outside. But I sure really would like for it to say someplace, it says, will be the inside tenant space with the cats not taken outside. Is that all we needed to say? And is that actually part of the, it comes under, on page 5, under impacts. So it says that the petitioner responded that the cats won't be taken outside, but is there any way that we can put that in this condition or in this thing to state that it can't be outside use?
With the reference to page 5, which is part of the department's analysis, it will not become part of the ordinance. So if you want a specific statement that the cats cannot be outside the tenant space, we would need to make that part of the motion, and then the department would add.
Well, I would like that as part of the motion. So my response would be that I would make the motion to approve the city's recommendation with the addendum that the kennel is not to be used outside, right? However legally you say that.
I think I understand the direction you're going and certainly can craft something with the assistance of the city attorney to ensure that all of the boarded cats remain inside and not outside.
Yes, thank you. That would address all of the people that live around there and their concerns, and mine as well. Thank you.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis, Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, Mr. Newberry, PZ 2-25.
PZ 2-25 G2 Property Holdings, care of Martin L. Ewell, 2691 Joy Carriage Drive, Chesterfield, Missouri 63017. A request for a change in zoning from the amended C8 Planned Commercial District to the second amended C8 Planned Commercial District for a property that is generally located at the terminus of Hawthorne Village Parkway, west side of State Route 109, and also being south of State Route 100. PZ 22-97 St. Ange Properties, Wildwood Auto Mart. Property address 17109 Hawthorne Village Parkway, St. Louis County locator number 23V130042, amended C8 Planned Commercial District, Town Center Workplace District, thereby allowing amendments to the current governing ordinance to include new permitted uses and authorize other related accessory activities at the subject location. Proposed use warehouse facility with parking area and also being inclusive of the outdoor storage of equipment and related materials, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared for your consideration tonight its information report, which contains its recommendation. The request is to authorize, for all intents and purposes, an office warehouse facility on a 1.7 acre tract of land that is located in the city's town center. The tract of land is located a tier removed from the intersection of State Route 100 and State Route 109. Separating this particular property from that intersection is the Phillips 66 convenience store with gas pumps and car wash. This particular property, as described in the information report, has a use existing on it at this time. That use is a Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District pump station and access road. Therefore, the property does have a very unique characteristic. Recently, the Departments of Public Works and Planning have been reviewing the improvement plans for the reserve. As part of that review of the improvement plans for the reserve, Metropolitan St. Louis Sewer District requires the developer to have a disclaimer on the plans relative to the proximity of this pump station and the potential for odors and different types of things associated with it. Acknowledging that, the department drew a simple conclusion. With the pump station on it, is it really a restaurant site? Is it really an office site? Is it more a site that an office warehouse for a proposed lawn maintenance business might be suitable? Certainly, the department believes it could be and might be. But as you know, it is town center. So from the standpoint of the building, the neighborhood design standards and architectural requirements associated with town center do apply. The petitioner would like to build a metal building and site it. And the department understands the desire for the type of use. However, the city in its 25 plus years of applying the regulations and guidelines of town center have not authorized a metal building as part of a new zoning request. Therefore, the department notes in its analysis, more information is needed, or the department could formulate a favorable recommendation relative to the building and its architecture. Suffice to say, a metal building may certainly work, but we don't have enough details on the type of siding, the openings, the doors and windows, the overhead doors, the roof, the shingling, etc. So from that perspective, it's difficult to make a determination. Also, the department notes that the information relating to the extension of improvements for stormwater management. There is a common detention basin that serves the Phillips 66 convenience store and this site. It is an old basin, so the department needs to understand before it can give a favorable recommendation if improvements are going to be required to it. Do those improvements include better channel protection, better floodplain management, and most importantly, water quality? And then finally, the plan does lack any components addressing screening, landscaping, and other improvements such as the access road. In lieu of those items being available, the department obviously couldn't fashion a favorable recommendation. And if those items aren't provided, certainly the department would recommend that the request not be approved or recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The department did talk to the petitioner this morning. The petitioner is working through the recommendations as part of the analysis. And so tonight, the department would respectfully request a postponement so as this matter can be taken up at the May meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Helfrey.
Do you just want a 30-day postponement?
Yes, I think Mr. Ewell and I discussed it, and I think we can come to some, can address most of these to a satisfactory point so as we can keep the process moving forward.
Okay, I'll make a motion to for a 30-day postponement.
All right, is there a second on that? Second by Commissioner Clayton. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of postponing,
Wait,
say aye.
I have a discussion.
Oh, sorry. Commissioner Cohn, did you have something?
Yes. Yeah, I have some concerns. I have owned several office warehouse buildings, typically of the type that's being proposed here. The greatest number of tenants, or my typical tenant, has been a landscape business. I've always had very difficult times with the storage of their equipment, and more particularly when they come back at the end of the day where they put their grass clippings, brush and things of that nature. And I think we have to look very carefully at how we consider any type of outdoor storage in a manner to make sure that we don't end up with piles of brush outside the building. And as a previous owner of those buildings, I get a little bit tired of the city notices. That was.
And certainly, Mr. Cohn, that is identified in the analysis that outdoor storage in town center would not be appropriate. And from the perspective of the petitioner, he said it is a condition that he could accommodate and meet. And we also identified the parking of equipment. Obviously, this particular petitioner uses pickups with trailers. Most are to be stored inside, but that'll be part of the investigation as we go through the next 30 days. So thank you for your comments.
All right, is this just one tenant then? I mean, ours is a multi-tenant building.
Single tenant, it would be Go Green, which is one of the contractors the city uses for much of its right-of-way and park maintenance.
Okay, so revote on the postponement, I guess. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, motion is postponed for 30 days. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, PC 39-94, Mr. Newberry.
A request with recommendation from the Department of Planning regarding St. Louis County's PC 39-94, the Grover Company, amended C8 Plan Commercial District, Town Center Workplace District, north side of Manchester Road, east of Etherton Road. Street address 16917, Manchester Road, locator number 24V540163, which seeks a modification to the existing site-specific governing ordinance to allow for certain modifications to the sign regulations as contained therein, including wall and arm and post types. Ward 8.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. As you may recall, the owners of this particular business spoke during public participation and had identified a desire to retain their post and arm site at its existing location. The current ordinance specifically to this post and arm sign requires it to be set back a minimum of 11 feet from the edge of public right-of-way. It currently is located at a foot distance. The department would note that if the 11-foot distance was adhered to, it would, for all intents and purposes, be in a portion of their parking lot area or so far to the east or west that it would not provide the visibility that is intended from this type of particular sign. Also, the post and arm sign is an accommodation to businesses along Manchester Road, since all other signage is limited to only wall or flat type or window signage. So some identification along the edge of right-of-way was assumed to be needed and has proven to be a very important component of the business community that does operate along Manchester Road. The department believes that by retaining the existing location, the impacts are limited. And certainly we are doing what I believe is the appropriate approach to the type of sign that is allowed. Therefore, the department is recommending a slight change to the existing ordinance to change the distance from 11 feet to 1 foot. If there are any questions or comments, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Discussion or motion? All right, motion by Commissioner Rubis, second by Commissioner Helfrey. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
and Mayor Garitano. Thank you.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, PZ 4-98, Mr. Newberry.
A response to a communication from Wendy Ford Ansco LLC, which is dated February 21, 2025, regarding PZ 4-98 AT&T Wireless Services, Inc., which seeks the Planning and Zoning Commission's review and action on a requested change to the existing conditional use permit, CUP, governing a 90-foot monopole telecommunications tower and related equipment shelter. This tower and shelter are located on the east side of Joe's Way, north of Valley Road. Street address 2028 Joe's Way, St. Louis County, locator number 20U540317, in non-urban residence district with a conditional use permit, CUP, thereby allowing for the installation of externally mounted arrays of antennas that each would extend from the surface of the structure 18 inches versus the required 15 inches. Along with this change, the conditions of this governing permit for these antennas, the applicant is also seeking the consideration of its annual renewal. Ward 2.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the department has prepared a recommendation report relative to this twofold request. The first of the request is to authorize a new antenna array to be installed on the monopole that would have antennas that would extend from the surface of the structure 18 inches versus 15 inches. Also, the second part of the request is to authorize the annual renewal of the conditional use permit, what has now become a very popular telecommunications tower. This tower is only 90 feet in height, but has two users on it at this time. And obviously, serves the area that it is located in. The department has reviewed both requests and is supportive of the additional 3 inches to be added to the antenna arrays and the annual renewal. If there are any questions or comments relative to this particular report and recommendation, the department would be glad to answer them at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vunich. Motion, any discussion or motion?
Can we do one motion with both issues?
I think that would be fine, but I would defer to Mr. Young and his associate. Can we do them as a pair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Then I make a motion to approve as recommended.
All right, motion by Commissioner Clayton, seconded by Commissioner Rubis. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, roll call vote.
Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Rubis,
Yes.
Commissioner Boren,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn is no longer on the Zoom call. Commissioner Clayton,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Chair Beatty,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Garitano.
Motion carries.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so with this expansion, does that mean that dead spot around the Strecker curve might go away?
Well, there is a hope that the new technology associated with these antenna arrays will improve the signal and support a much more robust network. I cannot guarantee that, but I will tell you that the telecommunications providers continue to upgrade their equipment across the city. And for the most part, we're hoping that equates to a positive set of conditions for our residents.
I only ask because there's not that much distance between those two spots.
Well,
I guess it's the hill.
And as I note in the report, the original request was for a much taller monopole at this location, but the initial review and subsequent reviews by Planning and Zoning Commission as well as City Council, it is very visible from Clarkson Valley. So the idea is to reduce its height to the minimum that the petitioner would accept. It would still provide at least a co-location along with the primary provider.
Did they say what type of technology it was?
I believe Mr. Newberry has had more conversation with Ms. Ford. I have not, but I will defer to him if he can answer the question.
Mr. Jackson, I apologize. I can't speak to that.
Doesn't matter.
All right. Okay, we're almost done with this anyway. Or with the agenda, I mean. All right, so last thing on the agenda, a request to no longer provide the paper copies of letters, reports, and other correspondences that are being presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission at its monthly meetings for the general public, accepting agendas and offering a QR code which can be scanned and allows for the download the packet of information onto any smart device. Words all. Mr. Vunich.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, this particular idea started with our city council committees relative to providing paper copies as part of every meeting agenda. Oftentimes we produce a number of copies. We throw most of them away, if not all, at the conclusion of the meeting. We do recycle the paper, but it is again a cost in terms of the paper, the cost in terms of the individual that makes the copies, and obviously we'd like to reduce those. So the department is proposing that we print agendas and have them on the table and a QR code that allows access to the full agenda as part of each and every meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The department would note this would be a test through summer to see if it's successful or not. And then we can take assessment at the conclusion of the test period and see if we've gotten positive or negative feedback or any feedback, and then make a decision at that time. So tonight, we would like to try it at least for a handful of meetings and see if it's successful or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. As I look at this paper I've grabbed in front of me, I'm not sure about this idea. Chair. Oh, yeah, Commissioner Rubis.
Are you talking about those paper copies that we provide the public back? Not
Yes.
provide the members
Yes,
of.
if the planning and zoning, if a planning and zoning commission wants a paper packet, we'll prepare that for that individual. What the department is describing is the paper copies we provide at the start of each meeting.
All right, Commissioner Helfrey.
Okay, so I would just like to say that I'm all for this if you still send the agendas with the links in them so that we can print them out and waste our own paper if we want to. And that you will give us these site plan things on these, at least this size of a paper. Because I can do a QR code on my phone, but I can't do a QR code at home. Right? I can't, Travis. I can't do it.
I'll leave it at that. But again, the Planning and Zoning Commission will not be impacted by this proposed test. You will continue to receive paper copies if you have requested them. You'll continue to receive the agendas via email on Fridays, hopefully earlier sometimes, but at least by Friday, where the links are provided to all the reports for your review.
Commissioner Jackson.
This is what I do every week.
I need to get mine back.
So actually, this is my personal one. I've never picked up the Wildwood one since my other one wasn't working. So do you need a motion for the trial period?
Yes, I would like a
So
motion
moved.
for the trial.
Second motion by Commissioner Jackson, seconded by Commissioner Helfrey. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I guess. So are we saying 3-month trial period?
Yes, we can go again. I'm thinking May, June, July, and then we'll do the assessment in August.
Okay. Right. And with that, tonight, that ends our agenda. Motion to adjourn. Commissioner Helfrey, second by Mayor Garitano. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, we're adjourned for meeting number 2. 5 minutes and then come back.
Certainly.
I've got an early flight. I was going to take off unless we have a quorum issue. And I can, if you need me here, I will go ahead and not sleep tonight. It's okay.
So the Site Development Plan Committee just needs 4 members. Would those in attendance like to raise their hands so Mr. Jackson can leave? Are all the rest of you staying besides Mr. Jackson? And Mr. Jackson, you are free to move about the country. I would extend that to and to the attorneys, you are more than welcome to stay for the site plan subcommittee, but you are also more than welcome to leave and conclude your time here tonight.
I appreciate it. We might stick around for this.
And so again, a mirror image of Village E across the street from where it exists as part of the villages at Brightleaf. What you'll see is a change. The majority of lots still will mirror what is Village E and Brightleaf, but now the lots at the nexus of the two roadways, Route 109 and Route 100, are now larger. They're 50 feet in width and greater in size, generally from the standpoint of 14 lots and then 16 lots. As part of the proposal, the city requested that the internal street align with the streets associated with Village E. So you can see that the intersections are across from each other, which is the safest approach. And each lot now backs to a common ground area, which is a very nice amenity for the future owners. Public space wise, there is a system of internal trails that will connect to the city's Wildwood Greenway corridor. And in lieu of a stacked bioretention basin, there is to be a lake with fountain. Fisher Frictal and the city of Wildwood discovered that stacked bioretention may not be the best approach, and certainly we appreciate Fisher Frictal considering a water feature, which the department believes will be an amenity to the overall project, as well as to the trail users along Route 100 and Route 109. Tree preservation plan has been provided along with a robust landscaping plan by the petitioner. Each of those have been reviewed by the individual's authorities within the city of Wildwood and found to be acceptable and in compliance with the site-specific ordinance, as well as the underlying regulations for each. As you can see, it is an interesting intersection because it is one of the major intersection in the city of Wildwood. And there are provisions for soundproofing of the units to ensure that from the perspective of traffic noise, every step is being taken to address it as best as possible. The Architectural Review Board has not yet seen the elevations for these, but will. So the site development plan tonight is the first step. All in all, the department is presenting to you a development that mirrors the villages at Brightleaf, Village E, adds a set of lots for the most part that is a amenity from the perspective of the city.
You're getting quiet there. Oh, I get it. Is it the power?
The projector's taking a break.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it'll just take.
All right.
It should start.
I don't have
That's my boy. Yeah, this building isn't equipped for 3 meetings.
Probably would say that for the Department of Planning as well, but. So again, the department is presenting to you tonight for initial consideration the site development plan package for the Point at Brightleaf, a 30-lot development on an 8+ acre site. All of the components create a connected community in terms of pedestrian and non-vehicular improvements. The design complies with the site-specific ordinance relative to lot size, lot width, placement, and all of the infrastructure is compliant to current regulations as well. 2 things relating to the infrastructure, and the department will conclude. First, all the streets will be a width of 26.1 feet, thereby allowing parking on one side. The package includes a parking plan that includes up to additional spaces. In this case, I believe, bear with me. 24 additional spaces to accommodate the two-car garages as well as the driveway approach itself. And from the perspective 24. Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain that? You said 24.
On-street parking.
Oh, okay. In addition to,
The two-car garages and the driveway apron that will accommodate two additional cars as well.
and they think that with all of the streetscape, they'll only allow 24 cars?
So there'll be 60 parking spaces in association with the 30 homes.
Uh-huh.
2 required spaces inside the garages, 2 on the driveway apron, and then there'll be 24 on-street parking spaces.
Got it. Thank you. So I'm sorry. I just didn't.
It's fine. And then also, last week, the Department of Planning, as well as our city attorney, received a development agreement. The ordinance allows the developer to receive traffic generation assessment fee credits for completing Taylor Road extension from the frontage of this property down to Route 109. So we'll take that kind of rural section that is north of this particular site and improve it to the standard that it'll provide safe ingress egress for all users of Taylor Road extension between Route 100 and Route 109, which is a plus relative to the project itself.
If only there was a roundabout there instead of at Pine Grove Loop. Sorry, editorializing.
That's quite all right. So with that, the department will conclude its presentation of the site development plan package. I would note that Chris DeGentz, Vice President with Fisher Frickel, is in attendance tonight. So if there is any questions of Fisher Frickel regarding the project, the department will gladly yield the podium to him. I know Ms. Helfrey has a question, so I'll stay until I'm told to leave.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Vernich. Commissioner Helfrey.
Okay, I have a couple and they're probably simple for you to answer, but I just want some clarification. Number one, with the fountain, because you know I have a little bit of experience with those fountains, I would advise that if they're going to have a fountain in this, that they have an alert for if the water goes below a certain level, because it's on this intersection, you're going to have a lot of evaporation in the wind. And I can speak from experience that those fountains are quite expensive to replace. So that was one thing. I have a question about this trash receptacle and this bench. Where are they going to be in this drawing that is shown? I see their mock-ups and I'd like to know where they're supposed to be on this drawing. I would like to know where the mailbox section is going to be on this drawing. I would also like to know when you are looking at this drawing straight on, the part of the road that goes along Highway 109, my eyes are really bad. I noticed that it doesn't really show trees there. It says existing trail, and I'm wondering why we didn't plant trees along that side as well. And then my final question was, what is going to go in the common ground between the two sections of 8 lots? Is it going to be just grass that will be need maintained? Are they going to put shrubs, trees? And that's all I have. Yeah.
I'll do my best to answer them, and then I'll defer to Mr. Gintz if I say something wrong or don't remember a particular question. So each of the lots will receive standard residential service. So they'll be given toters by Republic Services, the city's provider. And so they will have curbside service, not a trash enclosure or trash dumpster system. In terms of the cluster mailboxes, which are a requirement of the United States Postal Service, not the city of Wildwood, it is my understanding they will be in that area of on-street parking between lot 18B and 19B. And if Mr. Newberry could put the pointer, yes, right there. And so one of the things we've learned over the course of time, and we did this in the villages of Brightly, Fisher Frickel, we put the cluster mailboxes in areas where there is less traffic or available parking, so as we don't create an obstruction, people can get safely in and out of their car and pick up their mail. Certainly, it's not as nice as having your mailbox at the curb and you can walk from your home to the curb and pick up your mail. But certainly, again, federal government is the federal government. In terms of the fountain, Fisher and Frichtel, as I mentioned, had the bad experience with us as the city with this stack bioretention. I know they've done water features elsewhere, and I will defer to Mr. DeGitz to respond to how they protect their fountains and prepare them so when the homeowners association is involved, there are protections already available. Common ground. First and foremost, the tree line along Route 109, that's part of the right-of-way, is not to be impacted at all. So that's part of the rationale. It is also an area of that Route 109 frontage where we were able to preserve many of the more mature trees. And so I think we've addressed it as best as possible. And I believe the common ground areas behind the individual lots is to be turf for easy maintenance.
I'm just going to make a.
I did have one more question about the Taylor Road, Javi. You know, when we initially were talking about all this, that one individual homeowner said, you know, please help with the traffic. So I hope that there is a way, doesn't require an answer, but I hope that there's a way that we can limit construction traffic in front of their home, or at least really, really, really slow it down and clean it up for those kids that live there. So that's all I'll say.
Well, a couple of things. First and foremost, we have a noise issue coming off of the highways relative to some of the properties. We've had that an individual property owner there reference that. That's why we're adding sound mitigation to these units. We are improving the road surface. We are not removing any of the vegetation along the edge of roadway. So hopefully the buffer that remains will, buffer that is there will remain. And for the most part, certainly we have a speeding problem in the area, and I know our police department, along with the mayor, are undertaking an initiative in this area to try to address that as best as possible. Mr. Gintz would like to speak to a couple of the items with the chair's permission.
Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for staying late. I really do appreciate it.
We appreciate you hanging out for the first meeting as well.
Oh, I love coming to meetings. Do them all over the place. I'm sorry. I don't have a rock band, and I'm not a rock star. And that was pretty cool, though. That was pretty cool. It's a first for me. But yeah, just to answer a couple of the questions that I don't know if I think you were referencing on the public space plan that it calls for benches and a trash container. And so those are at they're at the overlook. There's a receptacle that's planned there just in case people are walking or for pet waste, those kind of things. The mailboxes are on the corner there, and they do have an additional parking so people can pull in as they're traveling and pull off the road versus just parking right along the street. We have done quite a few fountains. We use a company called Curryville Fisheries. They're experts at fountains. They certainly have shutoffs. We've found that it's important to put the fountain in the HOA maintenance plan and pull the fountain so that it's serviced and it's winterized somewhere between December and February versus leaving it out there. A lot of people really love to keep the fountain out during the wintertime, but it's terrible for fountains because the water definitely gets frozen and recedes and all those kind of things.
Well, I agree with you, and I understand that. I meant just as a general rule, when you have the water fountain going and the evaporation, that the water level goes down.
Understood.
And then you don't want your motor to burn up. That's the only thing I was talking about.
Yeah, I think it has a shut off feature for that as well, but we can look into that as we get into it further. So I think that's as far as the landscaping, I think you're looking at the public space plan, but there is, I think as Mr. Vinich mentioned, there is landscape plans that I don't know if were included in the packet, at least not the ones that I saw. So like those circles that you're seeing, those are all existing trees, and everything that's shaded up there is existing trees. There's a more robust plan. I think there's quite a few trees that are included in our landscape plan to go in those common ground areas, to go along Taylor Road. There's a whole continuation of the landscaping that was planted as part of the Villages of Brightleaf along common ground. So all of Taylor Road will look very consistent with what is currently out there: street trees, landscape beds, shrubs, all of those kind of things.
Okay. So are the individual home maintenance, is it going to be the homeowner's responsibility or the HOA's?
The HOA takes care of yard maintenance, landscape maintenance, and snow removal, yard stuff. Actual home maintenance is still on each homeowner relative to like painting the garage door or painting the front door. The homes are going to be, a high degree of maintenance free. They're James Hardy siding, they're architectural roofs, enclosed vinyl soffit and fascia, all of those things. So I would say that the life expectancy of these homes, with the materials that we're using, they're very low maintenance.
I was more referring to the yard work.
Yeah, the yard work is all included.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked is because me personally, if yard maintenance was my responsibility as the homeowner, I wouldn't really like that 15-foot common ground back there. But if it's
all
the subdivision
it's all taken care of
responsibility,
at the same time.
that's different.
Yeah.
Oh, Commissioner Rubis? Thank you. Sorry.
Is the trail that winds down 100 and turns and goes up, will that be impacted at all? Have to be changed or anything?
Oh, please.
No, sir. We do have to connect to it at two spots.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the biggest issues that we heard, from the council members about the density and the trail and impact to the trail and where people will be walking. And, we had a number of photographs that we took that really kind of showed how the trail it's at least 20 to 30 feet off the property line. So the existing trail, that's the city's trail. Now we do connect to it in two spots, but there's an existing buffer on both sides of that trail that we won't be, that's not on our property. It's on city property.
I didn't know whether construction or anything caused that.
No, I
trail
mean,
to
I
be
think
moved or-
we do have grading, we have limits and clearing limits, all those things that we have to adhere to.
Will the new trails be HOA or city?
The new trail will be an HOA trail,
Okay.
but it's open to the public. It's not like it's going to be exclusive.
Okay, but the HOA will have to maintain it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Unless the
that-
city wants to change, I think that.
In Brightleaf, Joe, is the city, or is that still HOA, all of the trail work within Brightleaf?
Actually, the trail, all of the sidewalks are public sidewalks, and all of the trail facilities are public as well.
Oh,
So we maintain them. Now, again, we did the trail in Brightleaf because it eventually, we're using the old right-of-way of Pine Grover Loop Road.
Right.
And so we knew we were going to make an eventual connection north toward Green Pines Park and that portion of the city. So that's a public trail.
So you're kind of saying that the city doesn't plan to take over this little loop that they're doing here?
Actually, I think we should. We're going to do a public easement, and the best way to maintain it, just by the economies of scale, would be us versus the homeowners association.
Understood and agree.
Yeah, and that's fine. And we can get into that when we do the record plat for the neighborhood. But yeah, that's completely acceptable either way.
Okay. Commissioner Helfrey?
Well, I guess my question is, what are you looking for? Do we need to make a motion?
Well, I would respectfully request from the site plan subcommittee a motion to prepare a recommendation for report for the full planning and zoning commission for the next meeting in May.
Then I will make a motion to accept the site plan.
And prepare the report for final action.
Yes.
All right, motion by Commissioner Helfrey. Second by Commissioner Rubis. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair, the Department of Planning, particularly its director, was hoping to get through a meeting without having to admit we forgot something. And it appears we forgot the landscape component of this plan set. So we'll send that out to you tomorrow via email so you can kind of see it. It is a very nice plan. It was done by Rusty Saunders of Loomis Associates. So I feel comfortable that you'll find it to be acceptable, but we'll draw attention to it in the report that we prepare for the next meeting.
Just
My
watch the
apologies.
tree.
Yep. And as Mr. DeGans mentioned, the trail actually is somewhat far removed. And so the tree preservation fencing, basically the limits of disturbance, will protect all of the vegetation in the right of way.
Oh, I'm referring to planting new trees next to the trail.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Nothing worse than trying to use them and getting hit in the face with branches.
We had that in front of Wildwood Trails, as I recall, and I think we addressed it finally for you. Or no, I should say Amber, Missouri addressed it for us.
Somewhat.
Yeah.
But
Thank
it's
you.
still a problem on Manchester Road. Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Helfrey, second by Commissioner Clayton. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, we're adjourned.